Ready? Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna,
Hare
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama,
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Padarajikacharya Ashtottara Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravajikacharya Ashtottara Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai Samaveda Bhaktavinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay. On this 25th day of March 2025 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are in chapter 2 entitled Contents of the Gita Summarized, text 26 on page 93. All right, let's just try to do it without the word. I think we can Just do line by line. Here we go. Atachayanam nityajatam nityam va manyase mritam tatapi tvam mahabaho nainam shochitam arhasi. Atachayanam nityajatam nityam va manyase mritam tatapi tvam mahabaho nainam shochitamarhasi. Atachayanam nityajatam nityam va manyase mritam tatapi tvam mahabaho nainam shochitam arhasi. Dharma. Atachayanam nityajatam nityam va manyase mritam tatati tvam mahabaho nainam shochitamarhasi. Atachayanam nityajatam nityam va manyase mritam tatapi tvam mahabaho nainam shochitamarhasi. Ladies. Atachayanam nityajatam nityam va manyase mritam tatapi tvam mahabaho nainam shochitamarhasi. Someone else? Atachayanam nityajatam nityam va manyase mritam tatati tvam mahabaho nainam shochitamarhasi. Ami, go ahead. Atachayanam nityajatam nityam va manyase mritam tatapi tvam mahabaho nainam shochitamarhasi. Asha. Atachayanam nityajanam nityam va manyase mritam tatapi tvam mahabaho nainam shochitamarhasi. Okay, Hannah, try it. Atachayanam nityajatam nityam va manyase mritam tatapi tvam mahabaho nainam shochitamarhasi. Chad, you with us tonight?
Atachayanam nityajatam
Atachayanam nityajatam
nityam va manyase mritam
nityam va manyase mritam
tatapi tvam mahabaho
tatapi tvam mahabaho
nainam shochitamarhasi.
nainam shochitamarhasi. What time is it there? 9 o'clock? 9:30?
Yeah, about 9:15.
Okay, he's making a sacrifice. He's in Nebraska. When are you
Hare
coming
Krishna.
back? You got any plans?
I'm not sure yet, but I'll let you know.
Okay.
Hare Krishna.
Haribo. Ata, if, however, cha, also, enam, this soul, nitya jatam, always born, nityam, forever, va, either, manyase, you so think, mritam, dead, tata api, still, tvam, you, mahabaho, almighty armed one, na, never, enam, about the soul, shochitum, to lament, arhasi, deserve. Translation. Lord Krishna says to Arjuna, if, however, you think that the soul or the symptoms of life will always be born and die forever, you still have no reason to lament, Almighty Armed One. Purport. There was always a class of philosophers, almost akin to the Buddhists, who do not believe in the separate existence of the soul beyond the body. When Lord Krishna spoke the Bhagavad Gita, it appears that such philosophers existed, and they were known as the Lokayatakas and the Vaibhashikas. Such philosophers maintain that life symptoms take place at a certain mature condition of material combination. The modern material scientists and materialist philosophers also think similarly. According to them, the body is a combination of physical elements, and at a certain stage, the life symptoms develop by interaction of the physical and chemical elements. The science of anthropology is based on this philosophy. Currently, many pseudo-religions, now becoming fashionable in America, are also adhering to this philosophy, as are the nihilistic, non-devotional Buddhist sects. Even if Arjuna did not believe in the existence of the soul, as in the Vaibhashika philosophy, there would still have been no cause for lamentation. No one laments the loss of a certain bulk of chemicals and stops discharging his prescribed duty. On the other hand, in modern science and scientific warfare, so many tons of chemicals are wasted for achieving victory over the enemy. According to the Vaibhashika philosophy, the so-called soul or Atma vanishes along with the deterioration of the body. So in any case, whether Arjuna accepted the Vedic conclusion that there is an atomic soul, or he did not believe in the existence of the soul, he had no reason to lament. According to this theory, since there are so many living entities generating out of matter every moment, and so many of them are being vanquished at every moment, there is no need to grieve for such incidents. If there were no rebirth for the soul, Arjuna had no reason to be afraid of being affected by sinful reactions due to his killing his grandfather and teacher. But at the same time, Krishna sarcastically addressed Arjuna as Mahabahu, mighty armed one, because he, Krishna at least, did not accept the theory of the Vaibhashikas, which leaves aside the Vedic wisdom. As a Kshatriya, Arjuna belonged to the Vedic culture, and it behooved him to continue to follow its principles. Om Ajnana Timarandasya Jnanandjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara, the disciplic succession. So this is an interesting verse, because here Krishna is speaking in terms of simply trying to get Arjuna to fight. He's not admitting, well, maybe, maybe it's true that, there's really no soul and that it's just life comes from matter, Prabhupada had a whole book published refuting that theory, that life comes from matter. It's called Life Comes from Life. I don't know if you've ever seen it. There was a series of talks that he had, morning walks. He would take a walk every morning for an exercise with some of his disciples. And they would talk about all sorts of things. And at a certain point in the history of the movement, Prabhupada was very concerned about establishing a scientific preaching arm called the Bhaktivedanta Institute, which is dedicated more or less to establishing on a scientific basis that life comes from life, not from matter. That a combination of any kind of matter cannot give rise to consciousness, you see. And in fact, one of Bhadrinarayan Maharaj's favorite godbrothers was named Sariputta. He lived here for some time back in the 80s and early 90s. I knew him very well. I remember when he joined in Brooklyn shortly after I did. And it was known that he had a degree in mathematics, So, oh, great. I forget what his name, Dr. Steve? I forget what his name was. So you can work in the office and figure out the accounts, I mean, he had a PhD in mathematics. He was so anyway, he wrote a book called Proof from Information Theory. This is a part of mathematics, is seeing the amount of information that's there in a certain part of the world and determining the probability that there's a mind behind it. It didn't just come about by accident, So he wrote a whole thesis, a whole booklet in ISKCON. Proving that life could not come from matter. There's too much information. There's too much, Bhadrinarayan Maharaj loves to speak on this. If you listen to his classes, every other class practically, he'll get into this. How could there possibly not be an organizing intelligence behind all of the wonderful things that we see in nature? I make it simple. Said, you want proof of the existence of God? Just think about your own body, how complicated it is. I remember when I was a kid, and I would get measles and mumps, haribol, and my mother was always giving me, taking my temperature, So I learned early on that the normal temperature is 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit, right? And if you have 99, 100, then you get a fever, stay in bed, So just think what it takes inside your body to regulate that temperature. It may be very cold outside, you may feel cold, but your body has to do something to get it up. Or you're very hot and cool you down, So you think that came about by accident? The example, you're walking along on the street and you see someone drop their cell phone on the grass. They didn't hear it drop because it dropped on the grass, so they went up. So you say, oh, it's just like a piece of grass. It just grew up naturally, No. Obviously, there's a whole bunch of intelligence and calculation that went into it. So similarly, all this complex universe, and especially our own bodies, and not just ours, but all these organisms, it's obvious that it's planned and that there is intelligence behind it. And where there is intelligence, there is a person. Where do we find free-floating intelligence? So it's quite clear that there is a life comes from life, and that there's a plan behind it, and that there's a God behind it. But here, Krishna is speaking about, even if you think that a soul will always be born and die forever, still there's no reason to lament. In other words, you may not accept what I just told you in the last few verses, that the soul cannot be cut, it cannot be killed. The Jayate Mriyate Vakadachan, a few verses back, text 20, which is the key verse for the whole lesson here on the soul. And we're almost, I think, coming to near the end for the lesson, the 20 verses on the soul. But that verse says, for the soul, for the living entity, the particle of spirit, of consciousness that we each have within us, and that animates our body with consciousness. It's nice to think, Bhagavad says, what is it? You can cut your fingernails, right, without any pain if you do it right, and your hair, we shave up, but it's not like, it's not like that. At least maybe after the first time it's like that. But your hair is part of your body, but there's no consciousness in there because there's no blood flowing in there. There's no blood flowing in your fingernails, So the consciousness is carried throughout the body with the bloodstream. You notice how sometimes you're sitting on this Vyasasan, your foot will fall asleep. But Narayan mentioned once that he got off the Vyasasan, he couldn't stand, he almost fell in. So that's it. Why? Because the circulation is cut off, and so the blood is flowing. So the nerves kind of go dormant. Anyway, but the point is, even if you think that, there's still no reason to lament. The whole idea is Arjuna was full of lamentation here. He was lamenting the imminent death, even by his own hand, of his beloved grandfather figure. He wasn't his real grandfather, but he acted as such. It's a whole story how they were left as orphans with their poor mother, Kunti, and they were taken care of by Bhishma, who was a great fighter and a senior member, and so he had great affection for them, and they had great affection for him, and there he is on the other side. How did he get on the other side of the battle? Well, the whole world was divided between the two parties, basically. And so just to have maintenance, he needed to, take shelter of Duryodhana. So that's the reason. So Krishna is saying, well, if it's just, even if you don't believe in the soul, it's just a bunch of chemicals, then why get excited about that, That's the idea here. Okay, so we can go on. So now the next verse is back to the usual philosophy. Jatasya hi dhruvo mrityur dhruvan janma mritasya cha tasmat apariharyarte natvam shochitamarhasi. So the same conclusion there. You don't have to shochitam. There's no lamentation. One who has taken his birth is sure to die, and after death one is sure to take birth again. Therefore, in the unavoidable discharge of your duty, you should not lament. Purport: one has to take birth according to one's activities of life. Sorry. After finishing one term of activities, one has to die to take birth for the next. In this way, one is going through one cycle of birth and death after another without liberation. This cycle of birth and death does not, however, support unnecessary murder, slaughter, and war. But at the same time, violence and war are inevitable factors in human society for keeping law and order. The Battle of Kurukshetra, being the will of the Supreme, was an inevitable event, and to fight for the right cause is the duty of a Kshatriya. Since Arjuna would be discharging his proper duty, why should he be afraid of or aggrieved at the death of his relatives? He did not deserve to break the law, thereby becoming subjected to the reactions of sinful acts, of which he was so afraid. By avoiding the discharge of his proper duty, he would not be able to stop the death of his relatives, and he would be degraded due to his selection of the wrong path of action. So he's developing a whole argument here. He says, it doesn't make sense for you to give up the battle. Number one, they're going to die anyway. That's my plan. Even if they don't die right away, they'll eventually die. So you can't preserve their lives. Number two, you'll be violating your dharma. I think we've been talking about that, how important dharma is in the Vedic culture, that very word, dharma. And it's important to understand what dharma means, ultimate meaning of it. As I explained in previous classes, in Sanskrit, the very word Sanskrit means perfectly composed. I remember reading amazing. I was here, and it was I think it was '89, but going back long ways. And it was an article in some science magazine that came my way, and it was that when the scientists in NASA is the space organization, they were looking for a language that would provide a template for them to organize computer stuff, the relationships and things. And you know the language they picked? Sanskrit. You know that. Because it's perfectly composed, it's perfectly logical, and there's all these wonderful relations with the words. So the root of dharma, as I've explained before, but there's some new people here, is the syllable dri, which we're very familiar with, giridhari, dhari. The dhari is also based on that, which means to support, right? The dhari is the holding up. He's holding up the hill, giridhari. So similarly, dharma is the essential characteristic of anything. Prabhupada would give the example of chili and sugar, If you see something that's supposed to be chili, and Prabhupada says when you go in the buy in the market, you test it out. I guess you chew it a little. And if it's not hot, forget it. It's useless, And if you see something that's supposed to be sugar, I don't know, it could be salt. Let me taste it, right? Oh, okay, it's sugar. So there's a certain dharma for everything. Dharma for instance, a chair. I got new people here. So you sit down on a chair, it's supposed to support you, right? And you all had faith in the chair. She sat in her place on the bench. It's basically the same idea. Sure enough, it's performing its dharma. But if it collapsed, it says, oh, what a useless chair. It's a chair in name only, right? It's not really a chair. So now the question is, what is our dharma? What is the dharma or the essential nature of the soul? That's the real question. And in our conditioned state, which means in this material world of birth and death, all these disasters and war and all of this craziness, we've come here because we failed to perform our dharma. And the ultimate dharma of the soul, well, the general dharma is to serve. We're serving. Now, you can easily see that we have to get, each day, unless today's Ekadasi, so if you fasted, that's another kind of dharma. But generally speaking, you have to eat something, right? Because you have to serve the stomach, you have to fill it up so you get energy so you can do your thing, right? So, and in a more ordinary sense, you grow up and you get a job, and you get married or something. So the wife needs to serve the family, and the husband needs to serve the family, go to work. And, the child, they don't want to serve, But they're serving anyway. They're serving their impulse to play, So then the question arises, because what is the best object of service that we can have that will give us the most happiness and the best result. And it turns out is God, service to God. And then we have to find out why, you see, because God, in an ordinary conception in the West, God just means the big controller, and then maybe say the punisher, right? The jealous God, revengeful God. You know, I mean, religions, I think, I don't want to name names, but religion often is the children grow up and they're terrified. If you don't do the right thing, you go to hell. Like, burn from the, you know. And don't they try to scare you? Said, okay. And if you happen to do something wrong, you got to go to church and confess, right? It's like, so there's that idea. But where is that conception of God that we can accept? And this idea of service, loving service. The meaning of bhakti is devotional service, service in love and devotion. And Krishna says in the 9th chapter, this famous verse about prasadam, you know, patram pushpam palam toyam yome bhaktya prayachati tadaham bhaktupaditam ashnami prayatatmanaha. So this is like a foundational verse for all the prasadam that we have, the whole dynamic. So Krishna here is giving a chance to everyone, because he's not saying, hey, pakors, halva. No, he doesn't. You have to. He says a leaf, a flower, a little fruit, some water. If someone offers it to me with love, with devotion, I will accept it. I will eat it. He says, I will eat it. Now, there's this, you know, confusion, because we have this prasadam and we offer it on the altar, you know, and at certain times, and the whole of it. And we're confident that Krishna will taste it, that he will eat it. But of course, when we come back on the altar 10 minutes or 15 minutes later, it's still there. And so someone says, well, what happened? He didn't eat it, right? Said, but here's the thing. Because Krishna is Krishna, he's all-powerful. Angani yasya sakalendriya vittamanti. Those who know the Brahma Samhita, means that with any of his limbs, he can perform the functions of all the other limbs. We don't have that capacity. You know, we can't eat with our eyes, although sometimes if we're really hungry enough, we try to. But he can do that. If he sees, and he sees how, you know, he can tell. This has been offered with love and affection, you know. And so he accepts it, and it becomes prasadam, and it has a purifying effect. It has an effect of destroying sinful reactions, which we're burdened with in our ordinary life, you see. In other words, we perform some sin, something against the laws of God, something that's, you know, nasty. And that's in our record now, you see. And that will the balance of our activities and our attractions and our attachments will be in our subtle body, our mind, intelligence, and ego. And also they'll be witnessed by God and by the demigods and everything. So we get just what we deserve in our next life. If you've been a very good person, even on a material level, very kind, sacrificing, you care about others, you're not so selfish, then you can get a very good material birth. You can even go to the heavenly planets if you do it right, you know? There are higher planets. We don't just say heaven. There are different heavenly destinations, you know? And in those, then you live for a very long time. You don't get old and diseased, you know? And you can enjoy all kinds of delights there, you know? But it's still temporary. It may be long, but it's not infinite. It's not forever. And as Krishna says, Tetam bhuktva swagalokam vishalam chine punye martya lokam vishanti. He's trying to discourage us from getting into worshipping the demigods for material purposes. So he says, you may enjoy godly delights there for a long time, but chine punye martya lokam vishanti. That after your pious credits, it's just like putting money in the bank, you know? You have a credit card. Oh, I can go on vacation. Let me go to Hawaii. Yes, good. Flight paid, hotel is paid, you know? But then after maybe a few weeks, I'm sorry, Mr. Smith, the card is kicking back. You got another card? I said, no. I said, then you have to go back to work, right? So similarly, after your pious credits are done, you fall down from heaven. You're not in Godhead. There's no God. There's demigods up there. So you fall down again to this Martya Loka. Krishna doesn't mince words in the Bhagavad Gita. The world of death. You know. So what progress did you make? You maybe made a little detour. You could forget for a while that this is actually birth, but then you didn't really. You're not going back to Godhead. But when we systematically practice bhakti yoga and we develop more and more our relationship with Krishna, and it is a relationship. Means that we can be his friend, and he's a friend to us. He's a master, certainly. But the whole thing is based on love and affection. It's not based on coercion or anything like that. And that is what the ultimate goal of bhakti yoga is. To live this life in such a way that we can graduate, that death is not just going to be a great terror and a mystery where we're going, you know, but rather you graduate at that point and you go back to Godhead, you never come back to this world. Now, it sounds like, can you prove it? You know, not empirically, but we have wonderful realized souls like Srila Prabhupada, who who took so many risks and underwent so many difficulties to give us this spiritual science of bhakti in the Bhagavad Gita and in his own talks and writings, and also giving us. As a vehicle, he would call it a via media. It's just like a medium for the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. This process is all based. The Bhagavad Gita is knowledge, and the practice on this chanting of this mantra: Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I first heard about this mantra. I was probably 24, 25. I joined. On March 27th, pretty close, in 1973. How many years is that? You can do it. You're a scientist. 52 years. Never look back. I said, what have I done? I missed out on it. No. The chanting is unlimitedly sweet. When we first chant it, we don't taste all the sweetness because we're not qualified. But it's just like someone who trains, here's what it's like. I remember, like these paintings, for instance. The devotees, if you live near the temple, you see them so much. And you know what each one is. It's a different pastime. We're coming up on the appearance of Lord Ramchandra, who was an incarnation of Krishna. And there's a painting here, right here, Sita and Ram in the forest. And those who know the pastime, they're reminded of the whole pastime of Ramayana, you see. There's Lord Chaitanya dancing in Navadvip with the Panchatattva, ecstatic kirtan. Krishna instructing the Bhagavad Gita. So they mean so much. You're trying to live the life, and all these... Prabhupada saw them as windows to the spiritual world. He was living it, and he encouraged the painters so much. He himself was an artist, he did some wonderful drawings, And so the point is that it changes the essence of your consciousness, and you can feel the presence of Krishna in the chanting, in the deities, certainly in the association, festivals. It's all a very public thing. We're coming up on the festival season, the culminating, but one of the main ones is Rath Yatra in Los Angeles, the first Sunday of August, unless it's Ekadashi like today, so watch out, then they'll put it back a week. But that happens once every 7 years or so. So anyway, and then thousands of people come out. We've done it. I was there for the first one, 1977. Yes, I happened to be in Los Angeles. Prabhupada, he was in Vrindavan, we kept hearing, his health is not so good. But there was this devotee named Jayananda, who was legendary in ISKCON, He was a scientist. He went to San Francisco to check it out, but he wasn't a hippie, He was a straight guy, but very, very responsible. Much older than most of the others. He was in his late 20s already. So he would come to the early classes. Most of the hippies, they were taking LSD. Late into the night, they'd sleep in. But he was there, often the only one in the class. Prabhupada's giving the class in the morning, you can imagine, And Prabhupada would invite him for prasadam. So his specialty, he was a very wonderful devotee in all respects. But his specialty was building the carts for the Rath Yatra. And that's how Jayapataka Maharaj became a devotee. Did you know that? He was from Canada, and everybody who's youthful and a little aware, they were trying to go to San Francisco in '67, the summer of love, you know? And so he was just wandering around Haight-Ashbury. And Jayananda, I'm not know all the details, but he was building the carts, I think, in a garage or something. And he would call guys in, hey, can you help out a little bit, you know? And that was the mood in those days. You know, it's like flower children, you know, yeah, I can do some help. So he went in and said, can you use the hammer? And, you know, 3 hours later, and Jayananda, he would be preaching the whole time. He would give him, you know, the basis of Krishna consciousness and this and that. And he was such a wonderful, loving devotee that he made so many devotees that way. And Jayapataka Maharaj himself was legendary, you know, books he distributed, thousands of disciples, you know. So that's, the Krishna consciousness is real, and it changes your whole outlook on your own life and what life means and everything. So, what do we do? Jata Shahi Dhruva Mrija. So Krishna is now giving, you know, back to the original philosophy. Whatever is born, whoever is alive, will eventually die. Jata Shahi, certainly, Dhruva means certainly. And one who has died will certainly be reborn. Dhruvam Janma Matasya. Therefore, in the unavoidable discharge of your duty, you should not lament. What's the point of lamenting? Nobody dies. That's you know. Every single body dies. We can't do that. You know. So you say every body dies, but nobody dies. Wake up, and open your eyes. You're not that body, you're a pure spirit soul. Chant the holy name and attain life's goal. That's ISKCON in a nutshell. So anyway, this is Krishna's going on, and it's an inevitable event. And so therefore Arjuna should perform his duty rather than lament the passage out of the soul out of the body, because that's going to happen anyway. And it's all auspicious because Krishna's there. This is another thing, because he's on the battlefield. Whoever dies there is going to get a better birth anyway. So that's the idea. All right, text 28. Avyaktadini bhutani vyaktamadhyani bharata avyakta nidananyeva tattaka paridevana. All created beings are unmanifest in their beginning, manifest in their intimate state, and unmanifest again when annihilated. So what need is there for lamentation? I think we can get the heat. Purport. Accepting that there are two classes of philosophers, one believing in the existence of the soul and the other not believing in the existence of the soul, there is no cause for lamentation in either case. Non-believers in the existence of the soul are called atheists by followers of Vedic wisdom. Yet even if, for argument's sake, we accept this atheistic theory, there is still no cause for lamentation. Apart from the separate existence of the soul, the material elements remain unmanifested before creation. From this subtle state of non-manifestation comes manifestation. Just as from ether, air is generated, from air, fire is generated, from fire, water is generated, and from water, earth becomes manifested. From the earth, many varieties of manifestations take place. Take, for example, a big skyscraper manifested from the earth. When it is dismantled, the manifestation becomes again unmanifested and remains as atoms in the ultimate stage. The law of conservation of energy remains, but in course of time, things are manifested and unmanifested. That is the difference. Then what cause is there for lamentation, either in the stage of manifestation or in unmanifestation? Somehow or other, even in the unmanifested stage, things are not lost. Both at the beginning and at the end, all elements remain unmanifested, and only in the middle are they manifested. And this does not make any real difference. And if we accept the Vedic conclusion, as stated in the Bhagavad Gita, that these material bodies are perishable in due course of time, antabanta hime neha, that's in the previous verse in this chapter, but that the soul is eternal, nitya sokta sharirinaha, then we must remember always that the body is like a dress, a garment. Therefore, why lament the change of a garment? The material body has no factual existence in relation to the eternal soul. It is something like a dream. In a dream, we may think of flying in the sky or sitting on a chariot as a king. But when we wake up, we can see that we are neither in the sky nor seated on the chariot. The Vedic wisdom encourages self-realization on the basis of the non-existence of the material body, or the temporary nature of the material body. Therefore, in either case, whether one believes in the existence of the soul or one does not believe in the existence of the soul, there is no cause for lamentation for loss of the body. So Krishna is giving, Arjuna, he's getting from every angle, the conclusion that you should fight, to bring him to the point of fight. And at the same time, he's giving us a lot of food for thought about the soul and the body. All right, so, oh boy, we've got a lot of things going on outside. Can you ask him to? So, Abhyaktadini Bhutani. So the main thing that you pick up from this is that this is the world of constant change. That's what it means. The word bhava, which is completely distinct from bhava. That's why it's so important to get the long and short right. Bhava means ecstasy, and bhava means eternal change, often sitting in for birth, old age, disease, and death. Birth, old age, disease, and death. So this is bhava sagara, an ocean, dangerous ocean of birth and death and old age and disease. So we want to get out of that ocean. And so what is changing and what is not changing? The soul isn't changing. The soul is unchangeable. That's part of what we learned this chapter. The soul is eternally alive and conscious, you see. But because we're minute, we can be covered by the material energy, maya or illusion. Krishna cannot be covered. We are little particles of spirit, and we have the same qualities in minute degree that Krishna has. But because we're so infinitesimal, we can be covered by the material energy and come to the conclusion, be in the illusion, that we are this body. And all the conditioned souls are in that illusion. You identify yourself, like I like to give the example of your license. If you stopped on the you go through a red light or something. Oh my God, I did that. I had some amazing, experiences in driving. I won't explain how this happened, but I've been in 4 collisions, not really serious, but enough that normally the person would say, "Hey, let's exchange insurance," because I got some dents, But none, I didn't get, and nothing on my record, even though I had these little bang-ups. But anyway, foolishly, this was a year or 2 ago. I went through a red light. I was in the right lane at Lamont and Ingram, I think. And no, Lamont is parallel. I'm sorry, Lamont and Grand. And they had just put in a bicycle lane, so it's kind of confusing. I was in the right lane, and there was a cop right there. I noticed a cop car. Yet, despite the cop car, when it turned, when they gave the left signal, I saw the car in the left hand coming around. I said, "Oh, it's my turn to go," and I went right through the red light. And the cop, I said, "Well, okay." I slowed down. I said, "I'm going to get a ticket now." So what did he take? What do they want? License and registration. Okay. So I had the license and registration. This is why I'm telling this story, but I'll finish the story. So he checked the license to see if I had a record of accidents, but I didn't. I didn't have any record. And I was elderly. The other cop came around to the right window, which I opened, and said, "What are you guys up to anyway?" Because, he saw. And I got to, he was very appreciative, Hare Krishna. So that was good. And the cop who, was more serious, he came around and said, "Well, I'm not going to give you a ticket now, but I'm going to give you a warning." So they pulled out some special thing. And I said, "Oh, that's because there was no record. I had no traffic tickets, but no moving violations, no accident." Anyway, so but we're constantly changing. Our environment, our body's constantly changing. All this is changed. So this is the world of change. But we ourselves don't change. So it's a difference between asat and sat. Asat means changing, ever changing. Sat is the eternal. We want to get back to that world where everything is eternal, where there's no time. Let me just give you this verse. This is a description of the spiritual world in the Brahma Samhita. Two verses. Shriya Kanta Kanta Padamapurusha Kalpatadavo Dhrumam Bhumis Chindam Aniganamahi Toya Mamatam Kataganam Natyam Gamanam Abhivangshi Priyasaki Chidanandam Joti Padamapitadasvajamapicha Sayatrak Chirabdi Sravadisadabhimjas Chisumahan Nimesharak Yova Vajati Nihiyatrapisamayak Bhaje Shwetan Vipam Tamahami Hagolokamitayam Vidantaste Sandha Chitibidanchara Katipiye. I memorized that a long time ago. So, what is this? This is Lord Brahma, who's the original person in the world. He engineers the world, but he's not God. He's a living entity, but he lives for a very long time. 8 billion. No, he actually lives for 311 trillion, 40 billion years. But he doesn't live forever. So anyway, this is a song that he wrote near the beginning of the creation, and he's describing Goloka Vrindavan. So in that world, that spiritual world, Krishna is the beloved, the ultimate beloved, and the goddess of fortune is his most beloved. Shriya Kanta, Kanta Padamapurusha. And then all the trees there are desire trees. Here there is hardly a fruit tree. We had I don't know if it's still a grapefruit tree out here. And the grapefruits would kind of ripen, but you'd pick them up. They're hard as a rock. You couldn't offer them. So even the tree, and these so-called coconut trees. There's no coconuts here. So this is the material world. But there in the spiritual world, there's the desire trees. You can get any fruit you want at any time. That's what Kalpa taught about, because they're fully conscious, So all the trees are desire trees. All the land is made of chintamani, like diamonds. There's no walking there. There's dancing, and there's no talking. Everyone's singing, and you can always hear Krishna's flute in the background, And then it describes how there's all these cows, the Surabhi cows, and they're all very blissful. They're fully conscious, and they're always pouring this milk from their overflowing happiness of being there with Krishna. So there's milk everywhere. And then here's the key: not a second passes away there. It's the eternal present. There's no past, no future, only the eternal present. Nobody's getting older. Nobody's getting evicted. And there's ever fresh pastimes that you enjoy with Krishna in certain relationships. Relationship of servant, of friend, of parent, of lover, like that. So that's the spiritual, that's our home, And that commonly known as paradise, why did we leave? Pretty dumb, right? It's stupid. It was because we were curious about what it would be like to be the controller and the master and the enjoyer, rather than the blissful servant, loving servant. So that's the ultimate goal here. And the foundation here is understanding the nature of the soul and the body and transmigration, and how we have an urgency to understand this philosophy and to begin the practice and try to get it as far along in the practice as possible. Because this is the whole purpose of human life. There's a purpose behind it. It's not just trying to enjoy as much sense gratification as we can, because that's suicide. That means you're ensuring another birth. Birth, old age, disease, and death. Which one of those sounds like fun? No. We've forgotten, by Krishna's grace, what it was like in their womb, 9 months like that, And then if you're lucky, you get, in these days, the abortion. Anyway, it says, and that's in human life. What to speak of insect life, So we're not, but it's great just attending this one class. Not that anything I said, but reading these purports and everything. None of you are going to become subhumans in your next life. Krishna promises. He says, Neha bikamanashosti pratyavayo navidyate svalpamapyasya dharmasya trayate mahato bayat. In this practice of Krishna consciousness, there's no loss and no diminution. And where else do you find that in the material world? You may accumulate so much, and you may get so skilled, but eventually you lose it, and it diminishes, and boom, you're finished. But in Krishna consciousness, there's no loss or diminution. And even a little advancement, even step number 1, protects you from the greatest danger in this world, the most fearful type of danger, which is you losing human form of life. You know, and in this age, it's so easy to act like an animal and become an animal. So none of you are going to become animals. Isn't that great? But that's just step one. We want to not only become human beings again. We don't want to become human beings. We want to graduate to Goloka Vrindavan, you know, back home, back to Godhead. All right, I want to leave a little time for questions. You look like you guys have a question, Nelson.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Bhakti, Nelson.
Once we go back home to the spiritual sky, is
Yes.
there any chance of us falling back down to the material realm?
You know, Krishna says about 4 or 5 times in the Bhagavad Gita that once going there, you don't come back. You know. Now then he acknowledges, well, why did we leave in the first place? Stupid idiot. I wrote a poem about this. This is the poem for today. The fall and redemption of the soul. This is not based on a given verse. Where Krishna lives, felicity abounds with pure simplicity and loving sensibility, all serving with humility. But when a living entity rejects his true identity and out of sheer stupidity surrenders to cupidity, he loses all sagacity and with it all capacity to understand reality or curb his sensuality. Abandoning humility, he touts his own ability, forgetting his fragility and fortune's volatility. Immersed in asininity for what seems an infinity of lives devoid of piety, he suffers in anxiety. Till contact with God's devotee, perhaps of utmost brevity, awakens his affinity for words of the divinity. Perceiving the futility of all his imbecility, the soul regains his sanity and casts away his vanity. Endowed with new humility, he serves with all ability and growing spontaneity his guru and the deity. Regaining his identity, the wayward living entity returns to the fraternity of Krishna for eternity. No coming back. Once you go back, Krishna says, Yad gatvana vartante tadama padamang mama. Once going back, you never come back here. And Prabhupada, he adopted that. That's probably a British saying, you know, once burned, twice shy, you know. If actually Prabhupada used it in preaching, a little baby, you know, doesn't know anything, you know, and his mother's carrying him, is also stirring the pot, and the baby wants to, you know, put his hand in the fire. I said, no, no, no. But the baby is assistant, so the mother says, okay, so he does, so he learns, you know, just enough to. So we've been burned in our many lives here, who knows how long. So once going back there, we won't take that stupid mistake again. Go ahead. We have one more. He has the mic first.
Thank you. So if we go back to text 27, it says, almost akin to the Buddhist who do not believe in the separate existence of a soul beyond the body. What do the Buddhists believe gets reborn? And in cases like the Dalai Lama, where he's not only reborn, but he's reincarnated, like he's the 14th Dalai Lama.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting you asked this question because this today I was going through, and I might as well tell you the truth about this, that Prabhupada didn't really write that. In the early days when, you know, back when we were in the storefront and Prabhupada was trying to get the Gītā out, so he typed out the manuscript. He typed it himself. Before he got the recording, he got a dictaphone, which sped things up, but also you had to deal with people who couldn't hear his accent. So that, you know. But anyway, so the editor for this this particular passage, what can I say? It's true. He interpolated this part. Currently, many pseudo-religions now becoming fashionable in America are also adhering to this philosophy. And what he said was, what was there, and also to the nihilistic, non-devotional Buddhist sects. This latest thing of as are, that isn't there. And we learned that, yeah, the Buddhists don't really generally have that philosophy that life arises from matter. That they understand that there's a soul or there's some consciousness and everything. So I'm sorry about that. That's going to be fixed in the next printing, you know. But and in fact, I'm campaigning that we don't even need that part about the nihilistic Buddha, because Prabhupada didn't say that. But the fact that the idea that life has arisen from matter, that is very common in science. You know, they're always looking for how they can combine in order to create life. So that part can stay, but we don't really need this nihilistic non-Buddhist sects, because as you point out, you're right, is that they think that something is reincarnated. It's not so simple as this. And it doesn't really add anything. So I'm sorry about that, and that won't be there, hopefully, in next printing. That's what it means when you're an editor. You got to look at the book like that.
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
So Hare Krishna. So my question was about Dharma. So Dharma for us, it means serving Krishna. But if we have a talent, do we have the responsibility to use it? Like in your sense, you are a poet, you're a literary man, like so good with languages, you're using your talents. I'll speak for myself. I'm a musician, but in the last 7 years, for some trauma, I'm not going to get into it, I've been procrastinating and I've not been doing music. And every day I say, I want to do music for Krishna, but some excuse, and I don't do it. So
but you have a musical background, talent?
Yeah. So, but lately I'm not been doing anything because of a series of excuses. So, do I have a responsibility to really use my talent because it's a gift from Krishna and I need to use it? Because I think using the talent, it's better. Because that's one of the basic principles of Krishna consciousness. We're given certain gifts. It may be something that someone's very strong. Okay, you can help out in the garden. In other words, there's always a way that you can use your gift, and that music is an essential part of the whole practice. So hopefully at one point you can learn the harmony and probably learn it in one day, Yeah,
you already know it.
Yeah, I'm practicing that.
Yeah, and then, you can help lead kirtans, you go out, and so forth. So that's what Krishna consciousness is. On the basic principle, we have certain facilities, ears, eyes, tongue, intelligence. And the more of those that we can engage in Krishna's service, the more they'll become purified and we'll feel the connection to Krishna. So and we see that throughout history. That's Srila Prabhupada. One of the most important things, and this is the best. What does it say in the cloud? The lining, the silver lining, to the British Raj, that they made everyone learn English. Right? They taught English. So without the English being there, then we'd still be in Bengali and Sanskrit. So yes, you try to use that. That's good if you can do it. Okay, we better adjourn because we are late. Oh my God. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol.